At work, every day won't be easy. So, you should always be prepared for the unexpected. And when that unexpected happens, you'll have to make a decision. This scenario is referred to as ethical dilemma. But what is ethical dilemma? Ethical dilemma is a situation that requires a choice regarding a possible course of action that, although offering a potential for personal or organizational benefit or both, may be considered unethical. And for every decision that you will make, there will be an organizational, a legal, personal, or economical effect. Scenarios that present ethical dilemma. Your boss suggests that it would be a mistake to hire a qualified job candidate because she wears a headscarf for religious purposes. Your boss believes that your traditional customers might be uncomfortable with her appearance. You are working in another country and are offered an expensive gift in return of making a decision favorable to the gift giver. You know that such exchanges are common practice in that culture and that several of your colleagues have already accepted similar gifts in the past. Your company is struggling financially and can make one of its major products more cheaply by purchasing lower quality materials, although doing so would slightly increase the risk of customer injury. You brought an office computer home so that you can work after hours. Your wife likes this computer better than hers and asks if she can use it for her online business during the weekends. If you were in these following situations, what would you do? To help you make a decision, here are some tips in dealing with ethical dilemmas. Let's first present a scenario. Ms. X and Mr. Y are both employees of Gibram Company. As they both work for a project, they have different perspectives with regards to the deadline of the said project. Deadline is fast approaching, but still, Mr. Y haven't done a good work yet. So she asked Miss X if he could have her work and present it as his own, and in return, he is willing to pay at any price. But the question is, would Miss X take the money or not? In making a decision, here are the 5 procedures to follow. Number 1. Recognize the ethical dilemma. Ethical issue. Is it ethical to give Miss X's work to her senior Mr. Y? Second, get the facts and identify your options. Third, test each option. Is it legal? Is it right? Whom does it affect? Who benefits? And who gets hurt? Based on the given scenario, we have the fact number 1. Laziness should not be tolerated at work. So we have the option number 1. Do not allow your senior to take credit of your work, but also do not report him to the management. In return, you will be able to present your work as your own, but your senior might continue his wrongdoings at work. Option number 2. Report your senior to the management. In return, you will be able to present your work and get a chance to be promoted, but your senior might get fired if you do so. Fact number 2. You needed the money to pay for your brother's tuition fee so that he can take the midterm exams. So you have the option number 3. Take the money and give your work to your senior. In return, you will be able to pay for your brother's educational needs, but Your family might get disappointed with you once they find out where the money came from. After knowing the options, proceed to the fourth step. Decide which option to follow. If you have already made a decision, proceed to the last step. Double check with the spotlight questions. How will I feel if my family finds out about my decision? How will I feel about this if my decision is reported in the local newspaper or posted on the internet? What would the person I admire most for their character and ethical judgment say about my decision? If you feel positive with what you've done, then you're good to go. To know more about the topic, here are the further discussions about ethical dilemma.
So now, let's talk about influences on ethical decision making. The first influence is the personal influences on ethics. A person's values, family, religion, and personal needs all help determine a person's ethics. So, ethical framework. Ethical framework is a personal rule or strategy for making ethical decisions. Why it is ethical framework needed in an organizational workplace? For a manager who lacks a strong and clear set of personal ethics, will find sometimes that their decisions vary from situation to situation. So, to act more consistently and confidently in making ethical decisions, they must have solid ethical frameworks. These frameworks gives priority to such virtues such as honesty, fairness, integrity, and self-respect. These values help people to make ethical decisions even in difficult circumstances. So how does people face ethical dilemma? So there are 3 levels of moral development in facing ethical dilemma, and it is called Stages of Moral Development by Lawrence Kohlberg. But first, let us know who is this Lawrence Kohlberg. Lawrence Kohlberg is born on October 25, 1927 in New York and died at the age of 59 years old. He is an American psychologist and educator known for his theory of moral development. So, these levels of moral developments are pre-conventional level, conventional, and post-conventional. There are 2 stages as you can see in each level. And Kohlberg believes that we move step by step through them as we grow in maturity and education. So it is said that most people are at pre-conventional level, which are in punishment avoidance and getting what they want by trade-off. And also most are in conventional level of moral development. And people at different levels of moral development may approach the same ethical dilemma very differently. So let's talk about the first level, pre-conventional level. In pre-conventional level of moral development, individual is self-centered. Moral thinking is limited to issues of punishment, obedience, and personal interests. Decisions made are directed towards achieving personal gain or avoiding punishment and obedience to rules. Here, for example, a person doesn't seek help from his co-workers in an organizational workplace and always rely on his personal beliefs on making decisions in their workplace. The second level is the conventional level. The individual is more social-centered. Decisions made in these stages are likely to be based on following social norms, meeting expectations of group memberships, and living up to agreed upon role obligations of their organizational workplace. The third level is the post-conventional level, where the individual is principle-centered, strongly principle-centered. This is where a strong ethics framework is evident. The individual is willing to break norms and conventions and even laws, and to make decisions consistent with universal principles. And Kohlberg believes that only a small percentage of people progress to post-conventional stages. Example, the student who doesn't cheat on take-home examination even if his or her teacher doesn't see her because he or she strongly believes that it is wrong, and he will believe in the faith of honesty. The second influence is the situational context and ethics intensity. First, let's define situational context. Situational context describes the reason why something is occurring and the appropriate behavior and actions associated with the situation. Next, what is ethical intensity? Ethical intensity or ethics intensity or issue intensity indicates the degree to which an issue or a situation is recognized to pose important ethical challenges. But the question is, how does situational context and ethics intensity influences ethical decision making? So first, the ethical dilemma. Because of this ethical dilemma, sometimes it causes struggle to respond and make people fail to see ethical components in an issue. The greater the ethical intensity of the situation, the more aware the decision maker generally is about ethics issues and more likely that his or her behavior will be ethical. So examples are a student cheating in a common place in a campus that it becomes accepted standard of behavior. They do not consider it as wrongdoings because all of the students cheat, so might as well this student cheat also. The conditions that raise ethics intensity are the magnitude, the probability, the immediacy of any potential harm, the proximity, the concentration of the effects, and social consensus. And a decision situation will elicit greater ethical intensity or ethical attention when the potential harm is perceived as great, likely, and imminent, when the potential victims are visible and close by, and when there is more social agreement on what is good or bad about what is taking place. So these are the first two influences on ethical decision making. First is the personal influences on ethics. Second is the situational context and ethics intensity.
be discussing the part 2 of the topic influences on ethical decision making. The first topic would be organizational culture. But first, let us define what is organization. According to Business Dictionary, organization is a social unit of people that is structured and managed to meet a need or to pursue collective goals. Next would be culture. The Center for Advanced Research on Language Acquisition goes a step further, defining culture as shared patterns of behaviors and interactions, cognitive constructs, and understanding that are learned by socialization. Thus, it can be seen as the growth of a group identity fostered by social patterns unique to the group. Let's proceed with organizational culture. Organizational culture is the collection of values, expectations, and practices that guide and inform the actions of all key members. An organization's culture defines the way to behave within the organization. This culture consists of shared beliefs and values established by leaders and then communicated and reinforced through various methods, ultimately shaping employees' perceptions, behaviors, and understanding. Organizational culture sets the context for everything an enterprise does, but because industries and situations vary significantly, there is not a one-size-fits-all culture template that meets the needs of all organizations. How does it influences ethical decision making? The culture and values of an organization are important influences on ethics in the workplace. Some organizations try to set the ethics culture by issuing formal policy statements and guidelines, but these ethics codes often have limited impact on their own. How a supervisor acts, what is requested, and what is rewarded or punished, by contrast, has a strong impact. The expectation of peers and group norms are also influential. In some cases, a person won't be fully accepted on a team if he or she doesn't join in actions outsiders might consider unethical. For example, slacking off or abusing privileges. In other cases, the ethics culture sets high standards and may even push people to behave more ethically than they otherwise would. Many organizations implement compliance and ethics programs to help guide the decision-making and behavior of employees. Compliance with regulatory requirements and the organization's own policies are a critical component of effective risk management. Additionally, managers may be responsible for creating and or implementing changes to an organization's ethical codes or guidelines. Ethical codes are adopted by organizations to assist members in understanding the difference between right and wrong and how to apply it to their decisions. There are three types of ethical codes: codes of business ethics, codes of conduct for employees, and codes of professional practice. A code of business ethics may set out general principles about an organization's beliefs on matters such as mission, quality, and environment. It may delineate proper procedures to determine whether a violation of the code of ethics has occurred, and if so, what remedies should be imposed. A code of conduct for employees sets out the procedure that should be used in specific ethical situations. It also delineates the procedures required to determine whether a violation of the code of conduct has occurred, and if so, what remedies should be imposed. The code of professional practice discusses common issues and difficult decisions that often arise in a profession and provides a clear account of what behavior is considered ethical, correct, or right in certain circumstances. The next topic will be external factors for the external environment, government regulation, and industry norms. External environment. External environment is composed of all the outside factors or influences that impact the operation of business. The business must act or react government laws and regulations are important influences on ethical behavior. Laws interpret social values to define appropriate behaviors for organizations and their members. Regulations help governments monitor this behavior and keep them with acceptable standards.
Rationalizations for unethical behavior. People often rationalize with after-the-fact justifications just like this. Convincing yourself that the behavior is not really illegal. Convincing yourself that the behavior is in everyone's best interest. Convincing yourself that nobody will ever find out what you've done. And convincing yourself that the organization will protect you. And these are the four most common rationalization for unethical behavior. So first is convincing yourself that the behavior is not really illegal. After doing something that might be considered unethical, a rationalizer says, "It's not really illegal." This expresses a mistaken belief that one's behavior is acceptable, especially in ambiguous situations. When dealing with shady or borderline situations in which you're having a hard time precisely determining right from wrong, the advice is quite simple. When in doubt about a decision to be made or an action to be taken, don't do it. Next is convincing yourself that the behavior is in everyone's best interest. Another common statement by a rationalizer is, "It's in everyone's best interest." This response involves a mistaken belief that because someone can be found to benefit from the behavior is also in the individual's or the organization's best interest. Overcoming this rationalization depends in part on the ability to look beyond short-run results, to address longer-term implications, and to look beyond results in general to the ways in which they are obtained. In response to the question, "How far can I push matters to obtain this performance goal?" the best answer may be, don't try to find out. Third is convincing yourself that nobody will ever find out what you've done. Sometimes, rationalizers tell themselves, no one will ever know about it. They mistakenly believe that a questionable behavior is really safe and will never be found out or made public. Unless it is discovered, the argument implies no crime was really committed. Lack of accountability, unrealistic pressures to perform, and a boss who prefers not to know can all reinforce such thinking. In this case, the best deterrent is to make sure that everyone knows that wrongdoing will be punished whenever it is discovered. Last is convincing yourself that the organization will protect you. Finally, rationalizers may proceed with a questionable action because a mistaken belief that the organization will stand behind me. This is misperceived loyalty. The individual believes that organization's best interests stand above all others. In return, the individual believes that top managers will condone the behavior and protect the individual from harm. But loyalty to the organization is not an acceptable excuse for misconduct. It should not stand above the law and social morality.